Hello, I'm Pastor Len Smith, one of the ministers here at Shepherd's Heart Fellowship in Osceola, Indiana. Today we're continuing to talk about the grieving process, and this is number 4 in our series. And we're going to talk today about how we can set goals and work to reach them as we are recovering during the grieving process. First of all, it's important that we start with short-term goals. Make a list of some fairly short, quick activities. Sometimes it's important to journal. Sometimes it's important to visit friends. Or, if you like to cook, prepare yourself a favorite meal. A second short-term goal would be to set time limits for completing activities. I remember years ago I was in some employment training, and I won't get into the type of business it was. But one of the things they were stressing us was it's important to handle each piece of paper once. Maybe you've caught yourself having, I have this here, I have this here, I have this here at a desk, or you start to do this, but you don't finish that, you start something else, and you end up with several unfinished items. That's not going to help you heal from the grieving process. You also need, in short-term goals, to recognize your progress. Give yourself a pat on the back for your hard effort. And I know some of you know a hymn worship song called One Day at a Time. Take things one day at a time. As the hymn says, one day at a time, sweet Jesus. It's important also to develop long-range plans as you're going through the grieving process. Write down the goals you have for the future. I think writing or word processing, or however you want to do this, whether it's short-term goals or long-term goals, are important, because if you don't get it in a computer, your smartphone, write it down or word process it somehow, you're going to keep repeating this again and again in your mind, and that's not going to be helpful for healing. So write down the goals you have for the future. For example, maybe you need to get a new job. Maybe you need to take a trip. Maybe you need continuing education. Maybe you need to try a new hobby. And don't just say, these are my long-term goals, but set up a time limit to reach your goals. And it's important to check your progress periodically. You can always re-examine your goals and readjust your plans, but check through those. It's also important in the healing process, as we set goals and work to reach them, as we process grief, to try new activities. Join a new club. Join a new organization. Be with people who have similar interests. This can be rewarding and fun. Why do I say that's important? Because some people just want to be left alone as they're grieving. I've heard people say, I wish I could just find a closet and close the door and be all alone. But that's not going to help the healing process. Do some volunteer work. There are so many worthy Christian organizations that cannot function without volunteers. Because when you help others, you are also going to be helping yourself. No matter how old you are, you might want to take a new course. There are adult education classes. There are college programs. You can choose a subject or a skill. Maybe you never had time to get involved with that, but you want to do that. And if you're still in the workforce, evaluate your career goals. You might find yourself thinking about making a career change as you grieve. Give yourself time to explore new career opportunities. I hope these suggestions are helpful. In the grieving process, you need to set goals. And of course, they're not going to be accomplished unless you work on them. And that's how your prayer life can help. And don't be afraid to find Christian friends that in confidence you can share with them some of your short-term and long-term goals to work on. Thanks for listening to this, the 4th in our series about the grieving process. And again, if you do not have a church home, we invite you to worship with us here at 10 a.m. Sundays at Shepherd's Heart Fellowship, or attend a Sunday evening Bible study at 5 p.m. or pray with us at 6 p.m. every Sunday evening. Thanks for listening, and please tune in to our next series, which will be number 5.